Imagine for a second that you are trapped in the cockpit of a commercial airliner.
Oh,
Right, you're at cruising altitude, and you have this co-pilot who is actively trying to crash the plane.
that is a terrifying thought.
It is. And this co-pilot is like constantly grabbing the steering wheel, hitting random buttons, screaming about some mistake you made, 10 years ago.
And then they're suddenly panicking about an email you have to send next week.
Yes, exactly. That relentless, chaotic energy. That is exactly how some of the oldest philosophical texts in the world view the untrained human mind. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are taking a stack of sources, including translations of the Bhagavad Gita, specifically the chapter on Dhyana Yoga, and we're looking at them alongside modern psychological commentaries from Divine Mindfulness, Gita Journey, and Vedanta students.
It is such a phenomenal collection of texts to synthesize.
It really is. And our mission today is to extract what might just be the ultimate ancient operating manual for human consciousness.
I mean, if you picture the setting for this, it is almost like taking a serene, ancient forest and blending it right into a modern, minimalist living room.
Oh, I like that visual.
Because we are taking wisdom that is thousands of years old and mapping it directly onto our incredibly cluttered, hyper-distracted modern lives.
Which we desperately need.
We do. And the foundational premise here is radically different from how we typically treat our own thoughts.
How so?
Well, we tend to identify completely with our mind. We assume every anxious thought or sudden desire is, us.
Right. We think, I am my anxiety.
Exactly. But these texts argue the exact opposite. The mind is a distinct instrument. And right now, for most of us, it is an instrument that is running completely out of control.
Okay, let's unpack this because our modern culture has a very specific, polished idea of what it means to quiet the mind.
Oh, absolutely. The whole wellness industry.
Right. We assume it means treating yourself. You buy a premium app, you find a quiet room for 10 minutes, and you try to chill out so you can just be more productive at work later.
Yeah, treating it like a life hack.
Exactly. But the material we are diving into today treats mastering the mind not as some productivity hack, but as the most rigorous high-stakes discipline a human being can possibly undertake.
It's serious business.
Very. So we want to figure out the actual mechanical steps this ancient manual provides to turn that rogue co-pilot we talked about from your worst enemy into your greatest ally.
What's fascinating here is how the text immediately dismantles our stereotypes of what a quote-unquote spiritual person looks like.
Because the classic trope is someone who runs away to a secluded cave.
Right. The guy who abandons his family, stops contributing to society, lights no fires, and just meditates all day.
Yeah, the total dropout.
But the Gita explicitly calls that out as a false path. Verse 6.1 makes it very clear. True renunciation has absolutely nothing to do with abandoning your work.
So you still have to do the dishes and go to your job.
You do. A true practitioner remains entirely in the world, doing their daily duties. But they change the psychological mechanism behind why they act.
And what is that mechanism?
They act without any attachment to the fruits of their labor.
Now, I really want to focus on that phrase for you listening, attachment to the fruits of your labor. Think about how you approach a project at work or even a personal goal.
We are almost always obsessed with the outcome.
Always. Am I going to get the promotion? Will people praise me for this? What if this totally fails?
And the text argues that the moment you obsess over the result, you've fractured your attention.
You're not even in the room anymore.
Right. You are no longer actually doing the work. You are living in a hypothetical future. And that hypothetical future is exactly where anxiety breeds.
Because you can't control it.
Precisely. If your motivation is tied entirely to a specific reward, your mind becomes incredibly fragile. The moment the reward is threatened, your emotional state just collapses.
So they're redefining the yogi.
Exactly. A true yogi isn't someone sitting in a lotus pose on a mountain, but someone who is deeply engaged in the action itself, right here and now, simply because it is the right thing to do.
And paradoxically, the quality of the work actually improves, doesn't it?
It does, because all of your cognitive resources are finally in the present moment.
Which perfectly sets up the central conflict of this entire journey. The commentary from Vedanta students points out this brutal paradox about the mind.
The ultimate frenemy.
Yes. Verses 6.5 and 6.6 state that you have to elevate yourself using your own mind. Like, for someone who has conquered the mind is their absolute best friend.
But for someone who hasn't?
The mind remains their greatest enemy. The tool you need to save yourself is the exact same tool that is currently suffocating you.
It is a terrifying loop to be stuck in, because when you experience a negative external event, say, someone insults you, that event happens exactly once in objective reality.
Right, it took 5 seconds.
But your uncontrolled mind, it'll replay that insult 1,000 times over the next week. You suffer 1,000 times for a single event.
Ugh, I do that all the time.
We all do. That is the enemy mind in action. It is generating suffering long after the external trigger is gone.
So if you are listening to this and recognizing that your own mind is currently functioning as your greatest enemy, that it's that rogue co-pilot, your immediate instinct is probably just to fight it.
To just force it to shut up.
Yeah, you want to sit down, clench your jaw, and demand silence. But the texts strongly advise against brute force.
You really cannot bully the nervous system into submission. And this is where the profound pragmatism of the Gita really shines.
Because it starts with the physical body, right?
Exactly. Before it even attempts to teach you how to control your thoughts, it demands that you stabilize your physical biology.
There is a whole section on moderation.
Yes. Verses 6.16 and 6.1-7, it plainly states that there is no success in this yoga for someone who eats too much or starves themselves, or, someone who sleeps way too much or stays awake all night.
That moderation piece really stood out in the Gita journey source, especially the analogy they draw with the life of the Buddha.
Oh, that's a great example.
Because before the Buddha achieved enlightenment, he fell into the trap of extreme asceticism. He really thought he could punish his body into releasing his mind.
He starved himself until he was basically a walking skeleton.
Right, and he realized he was getting absolutely nowhere. He was just exhausted and in pain. It reminds me of trying to tune a guitar string. Well, if you leave the string completely slack, meaning you overindulge in sleep, food, and laziness, the instrument won't play a single note.
Right.
But if you wind that string as tight as it will go, like punishing yourself and depriving yourself of basic needs, the string just snaps. You have to find that perfect, moderate tension to create music.
That tension is what the ancient texts refer to as a sattvic state.
Sattvic.
Yeah, a state of purity, balance, and luminosity. Think about it. If you eat a massive, heavy meal and then try to sit down and observe your thoughts, what happens?
I just fall asleep.
Exactly. Your body's energy is entirely consumed by digestion. You become tamasic, which means dull and lethargic.
And the reverse is true too, right?
Absolutely. If your lifestyle is chaotic and you're sleep deprived, your nervous system is flooded with cortisol. You are in constant fight or flight mode.
You're wired.
Right. You cannot ask a biological organism that genuinely believes it is under threat to suddenly achieve transcendent philosophical stillness.
It's just not going to happen. And it's not just about what you eat or how much you sleep. The text gets incredibly granular about your physical environment.
The physical setup is fascinating.
Verses 6.1 through 6.13 give these super specific instructions. You have to find a clean, secluded space. Then you lay down kusha grass, cover it with a deer skin, and then put a soft cloth over that.
Sounds like an archaic ritual at first glance.
It does. And you sit neither too high nor too low. You hold your body, head, and neck perfectly erect in a straight line. And this is my favorite part. You fix your gaze at the tip of your nose.
Which I know sounds a bit cross-eyed and silly.
Very silly. But there is some intense behavioral psychology embedded in those instructions, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, the kusha grass and deerskin were essentially the ancient equivalents of a high-quality insulated yoga mat.
Ah, that makes sense.
They kept the dampness of the ground and insects away, which removes physical irritants. And keeping the spine, neck, and head in a perfectly straight line serves two physiological functions.
What are they?
First, it prevents the fatigue that comes from slouching over a long period. And second, it completely opens the respiratory system.
So you can actually breathe.
Right. It allows for deep, unhindered diaphragmatic breathing, which is absolutely essential for down-regulating the nervous system.
And then there's the instruction to gaze at the tip of the nose. It's so specific, but when you realize what it accomplishes, it's brilliant.
All about visual data.
Right, because wherever your eyes dart, your attention follows. If you just sit in a room and let your eyes wander, your brain is busy processing the laundry in the corner, the book on the shelf, the dust on the table.
It's constantly taking in new information.
Exactly. But by locking your visual focus on a single fixed point right on your own face, you are deliberately shutting off that intake valve of new visual data.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, all of these physical preparations are about lowering cognitive load.
You're just removing distractions.
You are creating a controlled environment where your brain has literally nothing else to do except confront its own internal chatter. You tune the body so it stops shouting at you, allowing you to finally hear what the mind is doing.
Okay, so the body is tuned, the environment is locked down, the spine is straight. You're sitting there. Now we finally get to the actual mechanics of the mind.
The hard part.
The really hard part. The commentaries emphasize two distinct forces you have to deploy simultaneously to quiet the internal noise. Abhyasa, which means practice, and vairagya, which translates to detachment.
They are often described as the two wings of a bird.
You need both to fly.
Exactly. You cannot take flight with only one. Abhyasa is the relentless, continuous effort to pull the mind back to a point of focus. It is the active work. But vairagya, detachment, is what makes that work sustainable.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting because I have to push back hard on this concept of detachment.
A lot of people do.
Because when you hear that word today, it almost sounds like a pathology. It sounds like apathy. If you are totally detached, aren't you just numb?
That's the common assumption.
Like, how are you supposed to be a passionate creator, an engaged parent, or a supportive friend if your philosophical goal is to simply not care about anything?
That reaction makes complete sense because we often conflate love and engagement with possession and anxiety.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But vairagya is emphatically not apathy. Apathy is a defensive numbing. It's a refusal to engage because you are afraid of being hurt.
So what is vairagya then?
Vairagya is radical objectivity. It is the process of peeling away your false identities, your ego, your job title, your desperate need for situations to unfold exactly according to your preferences.
So it's the difference between loving your child and wanting them to thrive versus treating your child as an extension of your own ego and having a total meltdown if they don't get into the college you wanted them to go to.
Precisely that. Detachment means you engage with the world fully, but you let go of the rigid, anxiety-inducing narratives you project onto the world.
You stop demanding that reality bend to your will.
Exactly. And when you practice this kind of objectivity, the mind naturally starts to settle because it isn't constantly fighting reality.
And doing that isn't just a matter of sitting quietly and hoping it works out. The sources outline an incredibly systematic framework, usually referred to as Ashtanga Yoga or the 8 limbs.
The 8 limbs, yes.
And what fascinated me is that it starts far away from the meditation cushion.
It really is a brilliantly engineered psychological funnel. The 8 limbs actually begin with the yamas, which are external moral restraints.
Like nonviolence, truthfulness, not stealing.
Right. And then it moves to the niyamas, which are internal disciplines like cleanliness and contentment.
Which raises the question, why do you need to be truthful to meditate?
It's a great question.
I think a lot of people view morals as just societal rules, but the texts frame them as mental prerequisites. Think about it. If you are lying to people or stealing or engaging in constant conflict, your mind is working overtime just to maintain those lies.
You are generating your own paranoia.
Exactly. You are creating massive internal turbulence. You literally cannot achieve a still mind if your daily life is generating a storm of cognitive dissonance.
That is such a crucial insight. The moral framework isn't about appeasing a deity. It is about psychological hygiene.
Psychological hygiene, I like that.
Once you have stabilized your external behavior with the yamas and niyamas, then you stabilize the physical body through posture, which is asana, and breath control, pranayama.
And then we get to the 5th limb.
Right, pratyahara, which the texts describe using a brilliant metaphor, drawing the senses inward, much like a tortoise withdrawing its limbs into its shell when faced with danger.
I absolutely love that image. We live in an attention economy that is designed to constantly pull our limbs out of the shell.
Constantly.
Every notification, every billboard, every algorithm is specifically designed to grab your senses and pull your awareness outward.
And pratyahara is the deliberate retraction of that awareness.
You literally sever the connection between your external senses and your internal processing.
And only when the senses are withdrawn can you move into the final stages. There's dharana, which is laser-like concentration on a single point, and finally dhyana, which is the state of unbroken, continuous meditation.
And verse 6.19 uses this stunning imagery to describe a mind that has actually reached that state. It says, a controlled mind is like a lamp placed in a windless spot that does not waver.
It's a beautiful image.
Imagine a candle burning in a perfectly sealed room. The flame stands completely still, bright, and unbroken.
Contrast that with how our minds usually operate.
Right. Normally, our minds feel like a candle in a hurricane, flickering wildly, casting distorted shadows, always on the verge of being snuffed out by the next stressful email.
The windless lamp is the ultimate picture of clarity. When the flame isn't flickering, the light it casts is perfectly steady, which allows you to see your internal landscape without any distortion.
It is a beautiful goal. But I have to be completely honest here, and I know I speak for you listening. If you've ever tried to sit quietly for even 3 minutes, achieving a quote-unquote winless mind feels impossible.
It feels completely out of reach.
The hurricane of thoughts just seems infinite, and what I've found incredibly validating in these ancient texts is that the listener isn't the only one who feels that way. The hero of the Bhagavad Gita, this legendary elite warrior named Arjuna, he essentially throws a tantrum about it.
It is honestly one of the most deeply human moments in ancient literature.
It really is.
Because Krishna has just laid out this entire beautiful systematic process for achieving ultimate peace. And Arjuna's response in verse 6.34 is basically, with all due respect, that is absurd.
He complains that the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and just absurdly strong.
He tells Krishna that trying to subdue the mind feels more difficult than trying to control the wind itself.
You want me to be a windless lamp, but my brain asks the wind. It's such a relatable frustration. But Arjuna's anxiety actually goes much deeper than just complaining that the homework is too hard.
He hits on a real existential fear.
He does. He asks a question that strikes at the core of human dread. If I commit to this, if I step away from chasing money, status, and worldly success to try and master my mind, what happens if I fail?
In verse 6.38, he introduces the terrifying metaphor of the riven cloud.
The torn cloud.
Right. He asks if a failed spiritual seeker perishes like a cloud that gets torn away from the main cloud bank. It loses its connection, it drifts alone in the sky, and then the wind just blows it apart until it dissipates into absolute nothingness.
He's terrified of the void.
He is terrified of wasting his life, losing out on material pleasures, but failing to reach spiritual enlightenment and ending up with absolutely zero to show for his existence.
I mean, if you're going to put in this agonizing effort to fight your own neurobiology, you kind of want a guarantee of success.
Exactly.
And Krishna's answer to Arjuna's panic is arguably the most reassuring concept we found in all of these sources. He tells him, one who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil.
Such a powerful statement.
He definitively states that no sincere effort on this path is ever wasted. Not a single second of it.
Which, of course, raises an important question. How exactly is that effort preserved if you do fail?
Right. Where does it go?
The sources explain this through the concept of buddhi samyogam, which means the revival of divine consciousness. It frames spiritual progress not as something you have to achieve entirely in one single lifetime, but as an enduring evolution of the self.
So if you mess up, it's not game over.
Exactly. If a practitioner falls away from the practice, maybe they get distracted by wealth, or life simply overwhelms them, they don't lose the progress they made. It is banked. It is encoded deeply into their core being.
The texts basically outline a cosmic respawn system.
I love that phrasing.
Well, it's true. If you fail after a short time, you don't plummet into some fiery punishment. The commentary says you spend time in higher realms and are then reborn into an environment that is perfectly suited for you to continue your work.
Like a pure and wealthy family where your basic survival needs are already met.
Right, allowing you the freedom to focus inward. And if you practiced for a very long time before failing, you are reborn into a family of wise transcendentalists.
The mechanism here is profound. Because of the effort you banked in the past, you are innately drawn back to the practice in the present.
Have you ever wondered why certain people are naturally, inexplicably drawn to deep philosophical questions at a young age, while others have absolutely no interest?
The texts suggest this is buddhi samyogam. You are automatically picking up the thread of your own previous work. It is muscle memory for consciousness.
It fundamentally changes the risk profile of trying to better yourself. You aren't playing a game where you either win the jackpot of total enlightenment or you lose everything.
Every little bit counts.
Every single time you notice your mind wandering and you successfully pull it back to the present moment, you are writing a permanent line of code into your ultimate operating manual. You are banking that victory.
And that realization completely removes the anxiety of failure. When the fear of wasting your time evaporates, you finally have the stamina to engage in the Dirghakala,
Which is
the long, uninterrupted practice required to actually approach the pinnacle of this entire system.
Which brings us to the ultimate payoff. If you stick with this, lifetime after lifetime, banking those tiny corrections is what actually happens at the end of the road.
The state of ultimate success is called samadhi, or trance.
But again, our modern vocabulary kind of fails us here. It's not some hypnotic zombie state, is it?
Not at all. Samadhi is described as a state of boundless, infinite joy that is grasped by the pure intellect. completely independent of the physical senses.
So you don't need anything external to feel it.
Right. Your internal state becomes entirely self-sustaining. Verse 6.8 gives a striking visual marker for someone who has reached this level. They look at a handful of pebbles, ordinary stones, and a pyre of gold, and they see them as having the exact same value.
Because their internal joy is already at absolute maximum capacity.
Correct.
A block of gold literally cannot add a single drop of happiness to their existence, nor can the loss of it cause them an ounce of grief. The material world entirely loses its power to manipulate them.
And this is where the philosophy circles back to how we actually live together in society.
Because we might assume that someone who views gold and dirt equally would be completely detached from humanity, right? Just aloof and unreachable.
But the texts emphasize the exact opposite.
Right. Verses 6.29 through 6.32 describe the social consequence of this mastery. Because the true yogi has stripped away the ego and recognized the pure, observing self within, they immediately recognize that exact same self sitting inside everyone else.
They see the supreme in all beings.
As a result, they experience the happiness and the distress of other people as if it were their own. So what does this all mean?
It's the ultimate empathy.
It means the most solitary, inward journey a human being can take is actually the only way to achieve genuine, unconditional empathy outward.
You withdraw from the noise of the world, you master the turbulent winds of your own mind, and the reward is that you are finally capable of truly loving the world without ego, without prejudice, and without demanding anything in return.
So, to you listening right now, wrestling with your own rogue co-pilot today, mastering the mind isn't a quick fix. It's not a weekend retreat. It is the ultimate long game.
A very long game.
It is a process of tiny, frustrating, constant corrections, pulling your attention back to the present moment over and over again. But no effort is wasted. Every correction is banked.
Which leaves us with a lingering thought to consider. We now live in an era where modern neurotechnology, things like brain-computer interfaces, are actively trying to map and artificially alter our brainwaves.
Yeah, that tech is moving fast.
Very fast. So the ancient wisdom insists that the profound empathy and true connection we just discussed are the direct results of the rigorous long-term effort required to master the mind.
Okay.
What happens if technology eventually allows us to shortcut the effort?
Yeah.
If we can just push a button to artificially create a windless mind, do we still get the empathy or do we just get the emptiness?
Wow, that is a terrifying and fascinating question. We'll leave you to ponder that one. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Keep pulling the mind back. We'll see you next time.